I wish it was a British accent, but anyway, you have progress instead of progress, but that's okay. Means the same thing. Okay, very good. Very good. So we've been looking at Shantideva, the great Shantideva's text, Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. So we'll continue with that today with chapter 2, but before that we'll work with the posture. And yeah, you can see from my posture that I should have done some yoga and running around before the session. Body and mind are can be quite restless. So anyway, here we are. We need to try and be still and attentive, as well as relaxed as much as we can. But also, as I said, yeah, attentive, vigilant. And the upright posture will help because it reminds us of what we really are. There can be all kinds of nonsense going on in our minds. And I certainly can vouch for that nonsense in the mind, in my own mind. So all sorts of things going on in our head, and then all sorts of things happening in our life, complications, obstacles, confusions, miscommunications, even sometimes some unpleasant, incidents with other people or with, strangers. Or anything can happen, isn't it? We're just getting hot and tired in the heat. All of this can happen. But here we are together, most of you at home and several of us here at the center, and we have this capacity to just slow down and begin to connect with, what shall we call it, a basic goodness, a basic sanity. Basic sanity is nice because a lot of our life is, if we were to look at it from a certain perspective, it's insane. Constant thoughts, constant worries, constant running around, constant checking of messages on this tech instrument in our hands, which we can't keep our eyes off. It's insane, actually. Or at least from a 20th century perspective, it's insane. I guess 21st century, we have to have another perspective, right? So heaven help us with that. You can see I'm a bit old-fashioned, but this is for each of us to check how grounded and sane you really are. Of course, it's debatable how much an insane person will know about their own insanity or sanity. The point I'm making is we need to slow down and pay attention and be a little quiet and upright and dignified, and remember that we're human beings and not robots controlled by little technologies and by, also by our monkey minds, which are taking us in many, many directions, pulling us in different directions. As one student recently said, it's very hard to trust oneself. How does one feel trust and stability in oneself, believe in oneself? And I tried to give this person an intelligent reply, and I think it wasn't too unintelligent, what I said to the person, which was, how on earth can we connect with ourselves and our basic stability and trust ourselves if we're running around like crazy people all day, physically and mentally, never at rest? How can we make a proper, communication or friendship, let's say, with ourselves if we're running around like crazy, like spinning tops all the time, never ending, fidgeting, moving, planning, the five senses, drawn here and there. It happened to me yesterday after watching a very, very good movie, a biopic with some friends from Tushita. Well, I should say students, friends, yeah. We went for some food and we were surrounded by maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 different choices of food in one of these, what you call them, food malls, something, whatever, food, kya bolte hain? Food court. They call it a court, like the court of the invisible Maharaja of sensual gastronomic delights. We're in his or her darbar, surrounded by these different places. And after I was planning to be very abstemious and, as the so-called teacher within the group, I was just going to have a idli and sambar, which I had. But then my eyes caught hold, as they had before also, of the Kevantas. Kevantas is this dairy which has all these milkshakes. It's established in 1925, for your information. So my eye kept on going there, because the eye moves around, right? Refuses to stay still. If you're a good monk or nun, your eyes are supposed to just stay in front of you and not look around too much. There's a rule in the Vinaya for monks and nuns. However, my eye was roving here and there, and it kept on alighting on the Kaventas. So before long, I was suggesting to people that we needed a milkshake. Or some of us did. So what happened? The eye let and the brain, the thoughts worked together. Before long, there we were, three of us at the counter of Keventer, talking to the young lady there, debating. And of course, they're very intelligent there. The screen is no longer just a fixed screen. Things moving on their screens. Their advertising screen is like a little, TV. It keeps on moving, meaning different things coming up on the screen to entice you. So anyway, we got our 3 bottles of milkshakes with 5 or 6 straws, because there were 5 of us, so we were going to share. Matlab कहने का ये है, we were quite satisfied with our first course, and we'd even nibbled at some donuts, Dunkin' Donuts or whatever the name is. But there was I, was supposed to be, model of restraint. देख लिया मैंने Keventer के उसको. Despite all of my Ayurvedic injunctions to myself, कि ठंडा चीज नहीं पीना चाहिए खाने के बाद, digestion को खराब करेगा. No, that all went out of the window. So my point is, sorry for that long story, that confession. The point is, our mind, our senses, which work with the help of the sense consciousnesses, obviously, they're all over the place. They're insane, actually, in one way. So here, we're going to just sit still for a while, not look around, and be dignified, and be aware of our breath and our posture. And remember that we are human beings who are still alive. Are we going to waste our lives anymore, on rushing after milkshakes when we don't really need it? Well, I didn't. Maybe the youngsters did. I didn't really need it. But my mind, the wanting, the craving, was active. So how much are we going to, give in to this? When will it stop? When will we remember our responsibility to others, that we can't help others if we're out of control ourselves? Can we? Can we really help others if we are not in control of ourselves? It's an open question. So anyway, thanks to Tushita and all of you and the people here, we have this opportunity to slow down and pay attention. For a little while, on the face of this unhappy, insane planet. I shouldn't say insane planet, this wounded planet with a lot of out of control beings inhabiting it, which is proving very detrimental to all concerned, threatening our very survival, putting tens of millions of us in jeopardy of starvation as I speak. So we can rejoice that we are not, at least for a little while, we're not buying into that insanity. So let's sit quietly for a little while, minding our breath, minding our business, keeping a watch on the senses and on the mind. If it wanders, bringing it back gently but firmly to the breath. Remembering, if the mind wanders too much, then remembering, bringing down the excitement by remembering that we're going to die. And we don't know when at all. So good to be able to bring the mind under some kind of control. Otherwise, it will give us hell at the time of death. Literally, it's possible to lead us into nightmarish situation. So relaxing with the breath, being with the breath, relaxing with the out breath. Let's sit still, relaxed, quiet but attentive for 8 to 10 minutes. If you need a break in the middle, do take it. But try to maintain good focus as much as you can. And bring the mind back whenever you need to, recognizing when it has drifted off. Okay. So now to prepare the mind a little bit for the actual text, which of course is emphasizing the mind of bodhicitta. We will briefly reflect on the immeasurable compassion, which has 4 stages. First, here one can remember somebody one knows who is in a state of great mental or physical suffering, or both. Could even be oneself. Certainly, one's own pain can make us, if we are skillful, it can also make us quite aware of what other people also must be going through. So the first thing is to reflect on the following, that how wonderful it would be if all beings were free of suffering and the causes of suffering. Various kinds of suffering and the causes, which are the unwholesome states of mind based on ignorance, self-grasping ignorance, and the craving and grasping that brings about unwholesome states of mind. Wonderful if beings were free of that suffering and its causes. It would be incredible, wouldn't it? It would be amazing if the causes of suffering were eradicated. The deep causes, not the superficial ones like lack of proper transportation for grain or foodstuffs or medicine. Not that, that's also important, but it's not the deeper cause of suffering. Bombs and bullets, of course, are the cause of suffering, but they're not the deep cause. The deeper cause is in the human mind. Based on self-grasping ignorance, which creates insecurity, fear, greed, anger, attachment, jealousy, pride, confusion, all the rest of it. So maybe how wonderful to be free of that, but not only how wonderful, may it happen. May beings be free of it. May it happen. May beings be free of it. They could be, because we all have Buddha nature. We all have the ability to wake up to our pristine nature, develop our good qualities. We could wake up out of our own nightmares. It's a nightmare, living with ignorance, anger, attachment, jealousy, pride, confusion, miserliness, etc., etc. It's a nightmare. We try to pretend it isn't with all kinds of strategies, but if we're honest, it's a kind of a nightmare. It's a very unpleasant yo-yo, up and down situation. And then we can think, taking responsibility in the Mahayana way, I myself will enable others. I myself will enable beings to be free of suffering and its cause. I'll take responsibility. This is an unusual kind of crazy attitude, but it's what we try to develop in the Mahayana, taking responsibility to benefit others, to help them be free of their suffering. Because one knows it won't just happen on its own. And government isn't going to do it. And not too many people seem to be lining up for that kind of job. So oneself takes responsibility. And one realizes actually that one can't do it right now. So one invokes the help of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Please, Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, grant your inspiring strength to inspire me to be able to do this. Which is another way of saying that the other way is to say that actually I can't help others much. I can't help others really that much. I can only help others if I attain the awakened state of a Buddha. Then I know how to help others. I know how to best help others without fear, insecurity, confusion, without mistake. Right now, we may think we're helping someone, but we may not be at all. It's not what they need at all right now. We just don't know because we're not clairvoyant enough. We don't really know what will benefit another person unless we know them very well. And even then we can be wrong. So we can only help others perfectly when we are fully awakened. So that's what this text is about. Developing the causes, generating the sublime mind of bodhicitta, which is a very powerful, very, very powerful sort of stage in becoming a Buddha, you could say. It's creating this extraordinary state of mind, which a spontaneous state of mind, which is dedicated to becoming awakened for the sake of others. If we could develop this state of mind, it said that we become then very, very, very courageous and dedicated to others in a very realistic and powerful way, not just some kind of wishy-washy, sentimental idealism, not like that. Very powerful conviction based on deep reflection and meditation. So that's possible. That's what this text is about. And sometimes when we see the suffering of the world and our own suffering and the suffering of people we know, we can really feel some kind of incentive to study and practice these kind of texts, and bring it to fruition. It's like wanting to become a doctor because you see so much physical suffering, you just find it very painful. You see how people could live much better and healthier. So then you dedicate yourself to training to be a doctor, a good doctor, not easy. But then you become a doctor, you're a good doctor, sensitive doctor. You benefit so many people, so many people. Similarly, if we were to become bodhisattvas and then a Buddha, we could help people, guide people to be able to uproot the very root cause of suffering and attain very sublime states. I hope that makes some sense. So we're on chapter 2, which is called Disclosure of Evil, Disclosure of Wrongdoing, in the Bachelor translation. And what's it called in the other one? Confession. It's not an easy chapter to read. I mean, the words may be not so difficult, but it's rather powerful because it's reminding us of something we might not want to be reminded of, which is that we can be so stupid, or as it says in verse 31, so thoroughly vile and polluted with an abundance of faults. This is actually something that can be seen within oneself sometimes. Thank you. And with an abundance of faults. So Shantideva here is openly declaring this to the Buddhas, to the guides of the world, as he calls them. He's not keeping them secret by opening up and beginning to declare his wrongdoings. He's opening the path to freedom. And he's recognizing that this has to be done quickly because, as he says, the Lord of Death does not wait for things to be done or undone. This fleeting life is unstable. So who knows when we will be lying on our deathbed or whatever, lying injured, dying by the side of the road. Who knows? We can't tell, isn't it? One hears about people who die like that. So many people die like that. Accidents. So he's saying we create so much negativity in connection with friends and people we don't like, through attachment and anger. But they're all going to become nothing one day. They're all going to pass away, just as I'm going to pass away. Verse 35. So one remembers also a quote of Milarepa at this point, which I repeat again and again, because it's one of the few quotes I know from him. And I don't have his marvelous songs in front of me right now, but Milarepa, the great Tibetan yogi, he says, at some point, he says, toss to the winds, toss to the winds your concern for this life and bring to your mind the unknown time of your death. Bring to your mind the unknown time of your death. Remembering the pain of samsara. Why long for the unnecessary? We keep on engaging in unnecessary actions. Of course, negative as well, but also just unnecessary elaborations, unnecessary activities, unnecessary byroads, and we get confused in the tangle of various things. We're not straight and clear. It's like the other image, going round and round in the desert, because you're without water or proper guide. So you just go around in circles until you drop down dead of thirst. That's what it's like in samsara. We're just exhausting ourselves, wasting our time, wasting each other's time. That's what a lot of us are doing. We're all doing it in one way. Because if we are angry, confused, attached ourselves, then we're not doing anybody any favor. Least of all ourselves. So Shantideva is saying this, and Milarepa is saying this. He says in verse 38, he didn't think of what the consequences are going to be of his negative actions. That thought never came to my mind, that I too am a brief and passing thing. Through not having realized that I shall suddenly vanish, I committed so much wrong out of ignorance, lust, and hate. So, if we are ignoring our lives and death and just kind of passing through life on automatic pilot, then the kind of death we can, the kind of death that we could have is what Shantideva describes here. We can only expect something like this. But like he says in verse 42, well, of course, he mentions a very important thing in verse, thanks so much. In verse 41, he says, when death comes to me, then what benefit will my friends and relatives be? All these people who are crying and being upset and maybe already, making phone calls to the crematorium because we're in such a hurry to get rid of dead bodies, especially in hot weather. It's different in Tibet or Ladakh, where they would keep the body for a few days and have a dignified kind of procedure for the consciousness. But here we're in a hurry, So what's it going to be like then? Only one's own good actions, one's punya, one's merit can protect us then. But he's saying that I didn't really ever rely on that properly in my life. Only goodness gained in my life will help me, but alas, this alas is what I shrugged away. The other. And there's a powerful quote from Pema Chodron in her commentary, when she says that when her children were teenagers, she became a nun, but she was a mother before she became a nun. She had children. She said, when my children were teenagers, I took them to see the 16th Karmapa. He was a very, very great being. 16th Karmapa. As they weren't Buddhists, I asked His Holiness to say something that didn't require any understanding of the dharma, of the Buddhist teaching, or you could say of the jargon. Without hesitation, he told them, and they're teenagers, right? He told them, you're going to die, and when you do, you'll take nothing with you but your state of mind. What a thing to say to teenagers, but he said it. Presumably they didn't faint on the spot. Kind of honest thing to tell someone. So we could check our state of mind now and again and think, do I want to die with this state of mind? And if the answer is no, then there's work to be done. If we can say, yeah, I'm happy to die with this state of mind, it's a good state of mind, clear, kind, calm, focused on something beneficial, then great. And if we continually have such states of mind, then we should rejoice. But if there is some doubt there, then we have work to do, right? O protectors, verse 42. I, so little heeding, I had hardly guessed at horror such as this. And I accumulated a great deal of negative action for the sake of this transient life. He's really piling it on. I'm sorry, people on Zoom, if you're becoming horrified by this, but this is how it's supposed to be. If we have just wasted a lot of time, this is how death will be. He's not trying to give us something watered down, is he? Of course, he's speaking to monks in Nalanda monastery in the 8th century, right? So of course they are probably they're not, preoccupied with a lot of media or smartphones or anything like that, luckily. They're much more centered. They're studying all day, most of them. They have a simple life compared to us poor people in the 21st century. So they are able to focus more. And a lot of them would have done maybe some of the work that Shantideva is suggesting we do, like, promoting the goodness and so forth. And they're not wasting their lives at Nalanda, at least most of them. In fact, this text came about because the other students thought Shantideva was wasting his life. And they wanted to make fun of him and humiliate him, thinking that he was only eating, sleeping, and going to the toilet. That's why they provoked him into giving a teaching, and we got this text. So it's probably a ploy of Shantideva, actually, to behave as though he were a lazy good-for-nothing, so that they would stimulate him to teach this text. Because you're not supposed to just go to people and say, look, I have this great idea, I want to teach this text. It's not the way it's done. You're supposed to be requested to teach in the old tradition. You don't go and say, मैंने बहुत कुछ सीख लिया है, मैं अगर कुछ सिखाऊंगा आप लोगों को बहुत लाभ होगा, ऐसे, not like some modern gurus. In the past, you had to be requested to teach, then you taught. So Shantideva was requested in a strange way by people who wanted to humiliate him because they thought he was useless and a stain on Nalanda, the great university, that he was a lazy, good for nothing. Anyway, petrified is the person today being led to a torture chamber. Dry mouth, dreadful sunken eyes, entire appearance is transfigured. Like people on death row, I guess, some of them. What need to mention the tremendous despair when stricken with the disease of great panic, clasped by the physical forms of the frightful messengers of death. This is how it can be. You may have noticed, if you've ever been with dying people, they go in and out of consciousness. It's not as like when they're out of consciousness, they're having pleasant dreams or something. Not necessarily. It depends what their state of mind is. They could be having tremendous hallucinations and panic, visions. It happens. My grandfather in England, when he died, he had certain visions, which he told my mother. They weren't very nice. Just a lot of spiders and things. Maybe other things too, who knows? I was very upset. I was very close to my grandfather. When I went to meet him in the hospital on his deathbed, yeah, it wasn't pleasant. It wasn't the same grandfather who tucked me up in bed and with whom I had breakfast in the morning in his bed in North London. Wonderful moments with grandfather, but to see him on his deathbed, that was not pleasant. I think my mother knew it would not be pleasant for me. So she gave me some money to buy a classical record before I came home. I used to love classical music. So in those days, you could buy a classical symphony or something for £1, 99p or something. Classics for pleasure. So I bought something. I needed it. It's not pleasant seeing poor granddad in hospital. So anyway, we may be like that. Hopefully not, but we could be. We may not die at home in surroundings we love. We may be, our relations may have been persuaded by someone or their conscience or by advertising to take us to the hospital, which can be a very, maybe, alienating experience. The kind of plastic environment and equipment and things poked into our arms. And in many places not able to be with our relations for a lot of the time because the rules are against it. So we're just there with the equipment and our panic, our upset, occasional visit from a nurse who may or may not be tired or really feeling very kind or committed, and just who checks the equipment and goes away, doesn't even look or smile at us. I'm deliberately making this a certain way, but yeah, I mean, wards are like that, let's face it. So do we want to die like this? At least if we have a happy, calm mind due to having worked with our mind, Shantideva is saying, this will help us. What we do now will help us when we die. It's not wasted, the effort we make now. Upon seeing no refuge anywhere, we are, who can afford me real protection from this great horror? When, with terrified, bulging eyes agape, I shall search in every direction for refuge. And upon seeing no refuge anywhere, I shall become enveloped in gloom. If there should be no protection there, then what shall I be able to do? Therefore, I now seek refuge in the Buddhas who protect the world, who strive to shelter all that lives, and with great strength eradicate all fear. Verse 47. Here, by the way, Pema Chodron says, Shantideva uses two traditional teaching techniques. One proclaims the beauty and benefits of connecting with bodhicitta, and that's been there in the first chapter and will be there also in the third. But here, the other tactic, traditional teaching technique, employs fear tactics to shake us loose from our neurotic habits and frighten us into wakefulness. Yeah, you can call it fear tactics, but it's also realistic. He's saying he knows how people die. He's a Mahasiddha. He knows how people die. You know, we think we know maybe, but how do we know? We can't get into other people's heads. But if we get into our own heads when we're upset or in difficult situations, or sometimes even while we're going to sleep, we know there's a lot of confusion and pain there. So you can imagine how that's going to be even more when we die, unless we're really prepared. So he's being realistic. So you can call it fear tactics, but it's also being realistic. Yeah, it is fearful. Death provokes fear. The latter style doesn't work very well in the West. Here we're in the East, but yeah, we're educated in a Western way. Without trust in our basic goodness, its message is easily misunderstood. The point is to understand that everything has consequences, and they won't always be comfortable. Each day we're either strengthening or weakening our negative patterns. Karma isn't punishment. It's the consequences that we're temporarily stuck with. And we can undo it by following the path. And while death can indeed be terrifying, she reminds us, it can also be an opportunity for enlightenment. Depends on what we're cultivating during our lives. In preparing for death, it's extremely helpful to cultivate familiarity with bodhicitta and the unconditional openness of our mind. In bodhicitta training, we learn to use whatever pain or fear we experience to open our hearts to other people's distress. Easier said than done, but that's what we're trying to do. You know, let's face it, we can't even open ourselves to our own distress sometimes. As soon as we feel any distress, we rush for some entertainment or, you know, some object of sense pleasure or sense distraction, like a milkshake. I shouldn't be too harsh on myself. I'll make everyone who had the milkshake yesterday feel guilty. It's okay to enjoy a milkshake with a good heart, with friends. It's okay. But I was trying to say that we are distracted. And a cold drink after eating is not great for digestion. It caused me to go to sleep for 2 or 3 hours later in the day and have to be woken up for dinner, which is dreadful. Not a nice thing. So in this way, our personal misery doesn't have to close us down. becomes a stepping stone towards a bigger perspective. By training this way during life, dying will awaken our compassion. Even the discomfort of physical pain, breathing difficulties, or fear will automatically awaken bodhicitta. The best preparation for dying is to recognize the nature of mind. I've observed that death can be a strong support for waking up. Everything is naturally falling apart. Our body is falling apart. Our way of perceiving reality is falling apart. Our way of perceiving reality is falling apart. Everything we've clung to is dissolving when we die. This is in the commentary. The letting go that we cultivated during our life is happening naturally now as we die. So this is what we've wanted. Now it's occurring on its own. So, and it's very important, so maybe listen to this rather than reading the text right now, because you probably can't read and listen at the same time. Those who spend their lives learning to relax with groundlessness, death is liberating. But if we live our lives trying to hold on to this brief and transient existence, we're going to be scared, very scared when we die. Death is the ultimate unknown that we are forever avoiding. It's the ultimate groundlessness that we try to escape. But if we learn to relax with uncertainty and insecurity, then death is a support for joy. If we spend our lives searching for outside help through looking good, shopping therapy, addictions, and so on, we will look for something solid to hold on to when we die. And when we find ourselves seeking help with panic-stricken eyes, we'll discover too late that this habitual response will not help. So this is Shantideva's sobering message. We have to ask ourselves, in what do I seek refuge? When I'm feeling scared, unhappy, or lonely, in what do I personally seek refuge? Shantideva infers that seeking refuge in the ungraspable, inconceivable heart and mind of bodhicitta will pay off at the time of our deaths. So therefore, from now on, I seek refuge in the Buddhas who protect the world, who strive to shelter all that lives, and with great strength eradicate all fear. In the Dharma that resides within their hearts, that scatters all the terrors of samsara, and in the multitude of bodhisattvas, likewise I'll perfectly take refuge. So she says, if we take refuge in this awakened mind, the external embodiments of refuge, and in our own awakened mind, in our good heart, courageous and limitless, instead of in seemingly solid ground, then we will scatter every fear at the time when we need that the most. Gripped by dread, beside myself with terror, to Samantabhadra I give myself, and to Manjushri, melodious and gentle, I will give myself entirely. Manju Ghosh means melodious, gentle, Manju, melodious voiced one, the Buddha of wisdom. And to the protector of Avalokiteshvara, Buddha of compassion, who infallibly acts with compassion, I utter a mournful cry, please protect this miscreant. And then he takes refuge in the different bodhisattvas. To Akash Garbha, Kshiti Garbha, all the compassionate protectors. These are all very powerful bodhisattvas. Akash Garbha, abode of space, Kshiti Garbha. It's very important for dispelling obstacles and anything related with the earth, natural disasters, and so forth, crops. Kshiti Garbha is very important bodhisattva in this tradition. Also, I think for women and childbirth anything connected with the earth and earthy things. Kitigarbha is a very powerful Bodhisattva. So Shantideva goes for refuge to them at this terrifying time. And I seek refuge in Vajrapani, verse 52, the Buddha of power and skillful means. The very sight of whom will scatter the messengers of death. Yeah? They will flee in terror in all directions when they feel Vajrapani is there. Formerly your words I've transgressed, now I see these terrors all around. To you I go for refuge. Yeah. By doing so, may this fear be swiftly cleared away. See, formerly your words I transgressed is like Prema Chodron is saying we refused to take seriously the laws of cause and effect. We were careless. We didn't understand, appreciate the law of cause and effect, karma. And we continued strengthening our negative propensities. He's therefore inspired to follow the example of the master bodhisattvas mentioned here and to put their teachings into practice. In this way, they'll always be with him, protecting him from fear. Verse 54, if I need to comply with a doctor's advice when frightened by a common illness, then how much more so when I'm perpetually diseased by the manifold agitations of desire and so forth. Yeah. Physical illness, cancer, AIDS, whatever, COVID, yeah, it can kill us. They can kill us. But the teachings say that's nothing compared to anger, lust, ignorance, which destroy life after life. Countless lifetimes they destroy. Cancer and COVID and AIDS can only destroy one life. And they could help us grow spiritually, develop compassion, whatever. But if we are diseased with the agitations, as he puts it, of desire and everything, so much more we need a good guide, a good doctor for that. That medicine is far more important than something to cure cancer or AIDS. He's putting it in perspective in terms of life after life. And if all people living on this earth can be overcome by just one of these, and if no other medicine to cure them is to be found elsewhere in the universe, then the intention not to act in accordance with the advice of the all-knowing physicians that can uproot every misery is extremely bewildered and worthy of scorn. So he's saying, these manifold agitations of the mind, if all people on this earth, they can be overcome for many lifetimes by just one of them, miserliness, anger. If we commit just one of the 10 non-virtuous actions powerfully enough, it can throw us into suffering lifetimes for many, many lifetimes, according to the law of karma. So if we don't take the advice of the omniscient Buddhas that can, who have given us the medicine to cure them, the medicine that can uproot every misery has been taught us by the omniscient Buddha. If we don't take that medicine, we're stupid, right? We're totally bewildered. I mean, someone would consider us very foolish even if we just, were advised certain supplements for our health and we took them home and didn't take them, we would be, chastised maybe by a partner or friend or, member of the family, let alone if we had a bad disease. But here, we don't take the advice that will cure us of something that is destroying life after life, destroying our happiness for lifetimes on end, he's saying. Then where could you find such confusion and stupidity? We are worthy of scorn if we ignore the Buddha's advice. Because, he can help us uproot every misery. No other remedy exists. apart from what he has taught. And if I need to be careful near even a small, ordinary precipice, how much more so near the deep one of deep duration that drops for 1,000 miles. Yeah. If along a small and ordinary cliff I need to pick my way with special care, what need to speak of the immense crevice that plunges down unnumbered fathoms deep. But, today at least I shall not die. So rash to lull myself with words like these. My disillusion and my hour of death will come upon me ineluctably. I think that what does ineluctably mean? Like without control, without being able to stop it? If Sujit was here, he'd tell us immediately. But anyway, ineluctably, that's our homework to look it up.
In this translation, it says, if there is no doubt, as if there is no doubt.
Yeah, that's right. Think. It says inevitably in this translation. Inevitably, the time will come. So why am I so unafraid? For what escape is there for me? Death, my death will certainly come round. How can I relax in careless ease? So it's easy to get seduced by appearances. You can see people, like yesterday I was looking at all these young people at the food court. They were all much younger than me. I was probably the oldest person there. I couldn't see anyone really that close to my age. So most of them were, some of them were a third of my age. Many were half. Probably most of them were half my age or less. When you see them young bodies, enjoying, talking, eating, that's just a very temporary stage. Okay, they may be happy there. It doesn't mean they're happy in the evening when they're alone in their rooms, busily looking at Instagram and comparing themselves with others and all the rest of that nonsense. But when they get older, if they are fortunate or unfortunate enough to get older in these terrible times, what will they be like? Where will their happiness go? Will they be that happy in 10, 20, 30 years? In the world that is going to be, I think, unbelievably difficult for many by then, unless there's some incredible change of heart and mind in important people, enough people. What kind of world are those youngsters yesterday who had met, by and large, kind of, well, not all happy, but when you look at young people, you feel, oh, they must be happier because they're younger, because they look better than oneself looks in the mirror. They look better, so they must be happier. It's not true. So many are so unhappy, and how happy are they going to be when they die? If they've spent a lot of their spare time in food courts, then they're not going to be so happy when they die. That's for sure. They haven't bothered to even look at a thoughtful movie, and are just watching garbage, then how happy are they going to be when they die? Seeing the pain of samsara, why long for the unnecessary? That kind of thing. It's not bad to go to a food court, but you see what I'm saying? We get caught up in appearances. And if we're enjoying our Keventa milkshake, death seems a long way away. Of course, some people die while they're eating and drinking. Or they choke on a bone or something. Or a straw, I guess. I'm sure a straw must have been a cause of death for somebody at some point. What's up that? If it goes down the wrong way and can't get it out, you're just a bit unlucky. Ho gaya mamla. Vrindavan, as my uncle would say. You'd be taken to Mathura or Vrindavan and cremated. Who can grant me fearlessness? How can I relax and enjoy myself? What remains with me now from the terminated experiences of the past? Yes. Yeah, what will remain for us? Even today, what remains of that experience of yesterday? Just a memory. Where's the taste of that milkshake now? It lasted a few seconds as it went from the tongue to the top of the throat. Even by the throat, it's finished, really. The taste, then maybe some pleasant sensation or slightly unpleasant as it mixes with the hot food, whatever. But how long does it last? And then you have the memory, and then you maybe feel, oh, I need another one right now. And so it just creates most ridiculous kind of yearning when it's, Kevin's is far away in Nehru Place or Connaught Place. I'm certainly not going there, and I'm not going to order it online. Because the only thing I order online is books, rigid that way. So anyway, what remains with me now from the terminated experiences of the past? That beautiful sunset, that romantic evening, candlelight, that great movie. Where is it now? And especially we will think this way when we are sick and dying or old and dying. Yet through my great attachment to these things, I've been going against my spiritual master's advice. Yeah. His advice was slow down, pay attention, don't get caught up in the 8 worldly feelings, the 8 worldly dharmas, pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, good reputation, bad reputation. Don't flounder in all that garbage and that swamp that is going to suck you in and, lead to indescribable pain. Having departed from this life, and from all my friends and relatives, if all alone I must go elsewhere, what's the use of making friends and enemies? Unless you're really skillful, of course. If you're really skillful and you're very intelligent, and etc., then of course, friends, you can really help people. Even enemies, you will not see as enemies. And even your enemies, people who don't like you, will benefit from you somehow through the power of your goodness and your prayers. But for most of us, what's the use of making friends and enemies? It's just a bad habit. Yeah? Samsara is a whole bunch of bad habits mixed up together like hakka noodles, or worse. Hakka noodles with green and red chili. How can I be surely freed from an unwholesomeness, the source of misery? Continuously, night and day, I should only consider this. God, he's really letting it in. It's like he's kicking us when we're down. When someone has fallen down, you don't kick them. Shantideva is doing this to us out of compassion. गिरा भी दिया और ठोक रहा है, लात मार रहा है. नहीं? Naveenji, what do you think? He's not being very kind, or is he being kind? I don't know. Continuously day and night, I should consider only this. Therefore, how can I make sure to rid myself of evil, the only cause of sorrow? This should be my one concern, my only thought, both night and day, in the other translation. So whatever has been done by me through ignorance and unknowing, be it the breaking of a vow or a deed by nature wrong, I humbly confess it all in the presence of the protectors, with folded hands, prostrating myself again and again, my mind terrified by the misery to come. Some actions are evil by nature. This means things like killing, stealing. They are very negative whether you are a monk or nun or not. Some vows, if you take certain vows of a monk or nun, then certain other kinds of actions are also wrong. Like for some monks and nuns, even eating after midday is wrong, the breaking of vow. unless you're sick or traveling, you're not supposed to eat after midday if you are properly observing the vows. So if you carelessly just flout that vow as a monk or nun, saying it doesn't matter, who cares, I'm hungry, that is the breaking of a vow, which is not by nature wrong, but it's the fault of a broken vow because you took that vow in visualizing the Buddhas and in front of your spiritual teacher. You see the difference between things that are bad by nature, which are like killing, stealing, are bad for everyone. Whoever does it, it's a fault. Or harming people through sexuality or harsh words. That's harsh words with bad intention. That's bad for everyone. But certain things are not permitted for monks and nuns, or people who have taken vows for one day. Like you can take vows for one day. It's a layperson also. 8 vows. So that includes also no sexual activity, not eating after midday, not using perfumes and ornaments and so forth on that day, like that. And of course, not killing, stealing. The 8 vows you take for 24 hours as a layperson. So for that duration, you have to keep those vows. If you break any of them, that's a breaking of a vow, which wouldn't be the breaking of a vow at another time for that layperson, like eating or having sex or something. That's not a breaking of a vow for a layperson. But it is if you've taken that vow for 24 hours. Yeah? So you just see, he's just mentioning both kinds of things. Deeds that are by nature wrong and deeds that are wrong because they're breaking a vow. Even there's a minor vow, monks not going to someone's house and sitting down before you're told, before you're invited to by your lay host, which comes from an incident in the Buddha's life when a monk, must have been a big monk, went to someone's house, just sat down and broke the chair. So then the layperson complained. The Buddha heard about it. Then he made a rule for his monks. You don't go to someone's house and just sit down without being asked. And of course, when you do so carefully. Don't break the furniture. So these rules have meaning. So, if you've taken that vow and you go to someone's house and you just recklessly sit down thinking, who cares, arrogantly sitting down without being asked, you can see that is a breaking of vows. It's negative. It wouldn't be so negative for a layperson who hasn't taken the vow. Anyway, I humbly confess it all. In the presence of the protector, I join my palms and ceaselessly prostrate, mindful of the suffering to come. All my evils I'll now confess directly in the presence of Buddha. Some people do take the commitment and engage in 100,000 prostrations. Some do many more. Some have done 6, 7, 8,000, 800,000. Year after year they do. The Tibetans, it often takes them only 2-3 months to do 100,000. So I even knew one laywoman who was doing 3,000 a day in Bodh Gaya. It's kind of excessive, 2,000 to 3,000 a day, which means, she would finish in less than 2 months. Anyway, point is not to do things fast. It's not like gym training. It's supposed to be something that purifies the mind. But what I'm saying is some people do a lot of prostration, or a lot of mantras to purify the mind. Just as if we are very sick, we need a lot of medicine. I beseech all the guides of the world to please accept me. Please accept my transgressions as wrong and wrongs, since they're not good. In the future, I'll do them no more. Probably the original text does say to take me as I am, a sinful man. Since he was a man talking to men at Nalanda, there would have been no women, unfortunately, in the audience. Only, I think only men at Nalanda, studying at Nalanda Monastery. I think. Although it took a Dakini to come there to remind Naropa that it wasn't enough to be a great scholar at Nalanda. he had to go and meet his guru, Tilopa, to get the proper training. It was an old hag of a woman who appeared to Naropa while he was at Nalanda, the great scholar, who angered that Dakini by saying that he understood the meaning of the words. She asked him, she asked him, do you understand the words? He said, yeah, I understand the words of what I'm reading. And she was happy at that. Then she asked him, do you understand the meaning? And he said, yes, I understand. Then she got damn angry. She got very angry. You don't know the deep meaning. Tilopa tere ko theek karega. Go and search for this guru called Tilopa. And then if you read that story of the life of Naropa, you'll see how Tilopa totally destroyed the ego. All the last vestiges of the ego clinging of this great scholar from Nalanda, Naropa, who became a very, very great realized disciple, but only as a result of being almost, you could say, tortured by his guru. Yeah, put through many, many, many trials. Yeah, that's an amazing story, which may not all be totally true, but which shows us what the real practitioners do, what they put up with from their gurus. If gurus did that now, they would be jailed immediately. But in those days, I guess the law didn't even find out, or it was considered maybe good, I don't know. But Tilopa made Naropa do some extraordinary things, which helped to purify him, you see, so that he could then see the truth directly and not just as a great scholar. Okay, let's have some discussion, because also otherwise many dependent arisings will happen. People will get late. My auntie's dinner will be delayed. She waits for me. So many things happen as a result of delay. Yeah, and our friend Rahul has to go home, although no wife and children to wait for, but I'm sure you have things to do. Thanks for coming. Thank you, Rahulji. Always good to see you. Take care. Don't know when we'll meet again. I'll be away for a little while, probably. Might see you on Zoom. Take care. Yeah.
Have a good meeting.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care. Okay, folks online, any feedback on this horrifying chapter? The last part was horrifying, I'm sorry. Wasn't going to water it down too much. Hold on, let me unmute you. Okay. Navinji, were you waving your hand in desperation?
Not in desperation, but I was waving, yeah.
You're not drowning.
No, not yet. Or maybe I've already drowned and I don't even know.
Holy.
No, sorry, 2-3 things I need to work out, but I shouldn't talk too much if others. One thing which I wanted to ask, and then I'll. Yes. See, in my head, I'm finding it difficult to. There is this tension in my head, and I'm trying to figure it out. So the thing about learning to let go, the question of recognizing the groundlessness and so on is very well, but when I'm
that's difficult.
So, yes. So, but I'm still working it out in terms of being mindful. Seems to be one way to let go, but does it always lead to letting go? Is something which I'm finding it difficult. What are we being mindful of? At one level, we can say we are being mindful of the nature of reality intellectually in your head. You're trying to be mindful of that there is impermanence. Reality is dependent, originating, and so on. But when you are being mindful of the fact that you are clinging,
well, that you are what?
You are clinging. You are
clinging,
yes. Wise man sitting there as well. I can see him sitting.
So, what's your question or comment?
So I'm still trying to figure out.
Be clear and precise.
Yeah. So So, what are the
Difficult to
ways in which we can be mindful, even when just the fact that when we are mindful that we are clinging, uh,
Yes.
uh, where it's
You need to
confusing in the
write out
sense
your
that,
question. Sorry.
yeah. Okay. Let me be
I
sharp.
think I
Let me
get
try
what you're
being sharp.
saying. Let
Yes.
me
Yes.
respond to what I understand,
Yes.
otherwise this might go on a bit.
Yeah.
Sorry, it must be the Kerala food or air or something. The onset of the monsoon is creating clouds in the
Yeah.
communication also. Sorry to be rude.
Clouds. No,
This is
clouds are definitely there. I don't know whether it's a monsoon or not, but yeah.
So look, just to give the example, if I'd been more mindful yesterday, right? At the end of the idli sambar, I am now, you see, if I'd seen that Caventa sign and said, yeah, and watched very carefully, precisely the desire, the thought arising in my mind, if I'd seen it clearly, and then bothered to ask myself, really, do I need this? And I said, no, I don't need it. Do I want it? Yes. Is it good? Well, it's not great. I mean, do you really need it or want it right now? I said, no, I don't really need it, but I do want it. Then if I'd stayed a bit longer with that wanting mind, I said, well, look, you don't really need it. This want isn't that necessary. You've had enough. I'd already, by the way, polished off a bowl of Hong Kong fried rice and vegetables at poor Vishad's expense at the beginning of the movie. Okay, so let's put it in context. And here I was eating again at the end, 2.5 hours later. So then you can say, well, you don't really need to have it was just the habitual pattern that I have in my life, being used to something sweet at the end of the meal. So if I'd been mindful and really stopped, then there's a chance to let go, but not if you just follow the habitual pattern. But there was an ability to let go. It might have been painful for a few seconds, but then it wouldn't have been that painful. I'd have survived not having that milkshake. And I mean more than survived. It's not like I'd have been lusting after it the whole day afterwards. So there's that sense of being able to let go and even let go of one's own pain by, for example, remembering someone else's pain. If I brought to my mind at that point somebody malnourished, starving to death in North Africa, at that point when I was lusting after the milkshake, I'm sure I could have neutralized that grasping attachment, and let go. Although that's a kind of gross way of doing it, but that is one way to do it. To see what other people are going through in this world, human beings like you and me. They're going through hunger and thirsts. They don't have the choice of 15, 16 different kind of food and different kind of drinks. So that would have sobered me down a bit. So it is useful to slow down and pay attention, isn't it? Groundlessness, of course, that comes when we have more understanding of our transient nature and the fact that who really wants this? Who is getting angry? Who is getting lustful? Where is it? Where is that person? And then actually, where are they? Where is it residing? Seems to be residing sometimes in the mouth when you're hungry, or in the stomach, or in the head. Where is it? Where can one find it or see it? So I guess one needs to be someone who's willing to put the teachings into practice, or at least all of our waking hours. And it seems like I failed yesterday, and it literally put me to sleep later. That combination didn't help, didn't encourage my wakefulness, you could say. So, yahi baat. Okay, sir, hope it wasn't a waste of your time. Thanks for coming in the morning. It's kind of you to keep Dishad Bhai company. Thank you, sir. Thank you. आप छोड़ सकते हैं इसको. So I don't know if that makes any sense, Naveen ji. But groundlessness comes when we really do more meditation on dependent arising, and who the hell am I? Who am I? When I'm feeling neutral, but especially when I'm feeling aroused by anger or attachment, who am I? Where is this person who is aroused, who is attached, who is angry? We don't bother to do that reflection. We just give in to the habitual impulse. That's where we go wrong. We don't bother to analyze. We're swept away by the emotion,
Kabirji, my question is sharper on mindfulness, in the sense when you look at the one thing to do is just watch and let it go.
Yes.
And when you do it, your mind comes in, because sometimes your mind is confused. Are you letting go of your affliction or a sense of responsibility to others?
Well, that's a different question.
Yeah. So
You really have
when
a
you're thinking about, when you think about mindfulness, you end up at some points, at least, you need to use your judgment, and that judgment is mixed with ego. And you get confused what is what when you're trying to practice mindfulness. That's the confusion I have in my head.
I see. There can be complex situations where one doesn't know what is the right course of action. Yeah. Say you're attached to somebody, like your children or your, whatever. Should I go? Should I not go? Should I do this? Should I not do this? Is that the kind of thing you mean, or those kind of choices? Yeah, one just has to be mindful and compassionate with oneself and not engage in anything impulsive, and realize that at the moment we are what we are, confused, suffering beings, doing the best we can. I mean, and if we do try and generate some compassion before we engage in our actions, or some clarity, then that can help. But I agree, sometimes we just don't know what to do. We are confused. So then we have to accept and just try and stay with that, and not beat oneself up for not being a wiser person. It can motivate us to, I suppose, practice harder and become wiser people, right? Clearer, more insightful, who one day might even develop the kind of clairvoyances that help us make proper decisions based on really knowing much more clearly what will be the outcome of certain way of behavior, what will be the outcome of another way of behavior. But we are what we are right now. So I think part of this might be also a lesson in compassion for oneself. What do you think? Forgiving oneself for not being a Buddha yet. You know what I mean? It's hard sometimes for me to watch my own confusion and ignorance, because it probably is for other people too. But what to do? I can't pretend to be anyone else right now. I mean, I can pretend, but then you're deceiving yourself, you're deceiving other people. I could grow a beard and have a halo, or have wreaths of flowers surrounding me whenever I teach, and pretend that I'm really quite somebody. But that wouldn't really be any use. It just create negative karma. That's why I prefer to sit lower than I used to when I was a monk. Even that was deceptive, but now I like to sit a bit lower. Though they gave me 2 cushions today, so I'm a bit higher than the janta. But one doesn't want to deceive oneself anymore, being an ordinary being. So one has to be compassionate, but also not deceive oneself, Don't beat oneself up, but also not to pretend. And to accept who we are right now. Simply because of the fact that we are what we are right now, yeah? We're not what we're not, right? You know what I mean? It's like, I am what I am. You are what you are right now. And it changes. But if we're in a state of confusion or distraction, that's what we are. and we do our best. And studying the teachings helps us. And studying chapters like this are very sobering, but I think useful, because Shantideva is being kind by giving us a shock. He's saying death isn't just some kind of nice, pleasant, slow descent into blissful unconsciousness with, heaven awaiting at the other end, which some people have that idea. They've now gone to their, their heavenly father, their heavenly abode. Oh, he had a suffering life. Now, finally, he's at peace. Unfortunately, or whatever, Buddhism says no. You could have had a horrendous suffering life and still have a horrendous suffering death and a horrendous suffering future if one hasn't worked with one's mind, or depending on the karma. We are apparently dominated by our karmic whims at the time of death, unless we are quite realized. So it's touch and go, It's not a pleasant chapter. He's not trying to be pleasant in this chapter. He is trying to scare us. Fear tactic. He first makes us feel very good by remembering bodhicitta in the first chapter, how wonderful it is. But then he's kind of saying, it's like, showing us a beautiful holiday brochure with this marvelous place we could go to. And then the second chapter, he's reminding us of how poor we are, We haven't created the cause to go on that holiday, because we haven't created the cause to have enough money. We've been whatever. So it's like carrot and stick, the hoirai, but that's the way to wake us up, us stupid, ignorant, careless people. Well, I speak for myself, not for everyone. How else to wake us up? He could give us a watered down version of, new agey kind of spirituality, soft glow, and, just play some subliminal music while you go to sleep and you'll be okay. It'll help. These things help a bit, but, having a massage, having a hot shower, cool shower, whatever, that can help, but it's too temporary. You're saying we need some drastic measure to wake up. Another Lama says that initially we should be so afraid of the death meditation that we shouldn't be able to sleep. What do you say? A Lama says this, who highly revered in the Gelug tradition. Liberation in the palm of the hand. You want liberation in the palm of your hand, you have to endure some sleepless nights, fearing death. Yeah, anyway, we have to balance this with the Buddha nature and the fact that we have all these good qualities. We have a human life. We have so much, going for us. Spiritual friends, teachers, authentic literature, places to study. I mean, we have enough food, too much food probably, too many milkshakes. Once you just go to the movies and then just come out and go straight to the exit and not look back, order the vehicle to take you home to a simple dal bhat or khichdi or something. Yeah. I'm joking. One should be able to enjoy without being guilty, but we need to remember, if we eat and drink unmindfully, just giving into desire, the consequences are not good. It just builds up a pattern. That's the point, habitual pattern, which is that you can't just suddenly reverse it at the time of death. It's too late then. Okay, I have to get going now. Sorry, I hope it wasn't too depressing. Sagar Bhai, it's all your fault for reminding us of this great movie you took us to. It's a very good movie, I appreciate.
What film was this? What film did you?
Aparajito, a
Oh,
biopic on Satyajit Ray and the making of his first movie.
Yeah.
Highly recommended.
wow.
Yeah.
22 movie, not the 1956 one, but the 2022 one. Do take a look at it. If you can find it's on Amazon. Somebody? Huh? In theaters only. Maybe it doesn't reach
Oh, okay.
Kerala yet. It's a long way. Yeah. It's in Bengali with subtitles.
No,
Excellent.
most Bengali things will come to Kerala before it reaches Delhi.
Okay, good.
The connection
Good,
between
good.
Bengal and Kerala is far stronger.
You're highly cultured there, you communists.
Yes.
Yes, very good. Yeah, it's beautifully done in black and white. Incredibly intelligent movie. We all enjoyed it a lot. There were 5 of us went. Dr. Sonali, Anushri, Vishad, myself, and Sagar. Sagar Bhai. It was instigated by Sagar Bhai, and I really hope that it inspired you, Sagar Bhai, to make excellent. We'll be watching your movies in the Inox in 5-10 years. I think.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Black and white one. Anushri ji, let me know quickly what you decide, because otherwise it's unfair on everyone. Okay.
Are you leaving? Your phone is.
You left your phone. You'd have been totally bewildered. Yeah. Send me a message later today, okay? Okay? Yeah? Okay. ठीक है. Jagmohan ji, I hope you weren't too bored.
No, I'm not bored. I enjoyed the discussion.
नमस्कार कह रहे हैं आपके दोस्त लोग. बॉब भी नमस्कार कह रहे हैं वाला. बॉब भी आपको प्रणाम कह रहा है. Yeah. All your friends are missing you. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Let's please dedicate also for us to internalize some of what Shantideva is saying, so that, we can make our lives worthwhile. And please dedicate for the long life of Lama Zopa Rinpoche and His Holiness Dalai Lama and all the other great teachers. May they have long and healthy lives. May all their holy wishes be fulfilled. So, okay, I'm getting a lift home on Bob's motorcycle, so I'll make a move. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care. Thank you, Jagmohan ji.
Thank you, Kabir ji.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
See you soon.